Hello, welcome to how I passed the AKT stress-free. My name's Karan, I'm a GP ST3 in the Midlands, and we're going to talk to you about how I prepared for the exam that is the AKT. Couple disclaimers, I didn't actually get 89%, it was 88.5, first attempt at the beginning of ST3. I put OV3 there, and what that means is this wasn't a stress-free experience at all. It was stressful, it was an exam, it's a difficult exam, but I put OV3 there because that basically means overwhelm-free. So while I did get quite stressed, I didn't let it overwhelm me, if that makes sense. It didn't consume everything I was doing, and I didn't burn out, which I definitely have done in previous exams, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. Third disclaimer, this is not advice. This is not how you should pass the AKT, and I'd definitely make the video a lot more different if that was the case. Literally, it's just what I did, which probably is going to be a bit not like controversial, because it's just like revising. How controversial can it be? But it will be a little bit against the grain, but maybe there'll be some things that you might be able to take away and apply to your own revision. But yeah, this is just like an interest only, not an advice video. Okay, so I put this less than 3 months thing, and that's basically to say that if your AKT is coming up within 3 months, I'd probably stop watching the video if I'm honest. There might be some bits you can take away, but this is definitely a lot more sort of a slow burn, if you like. So I started around sort of 3.5 months before, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Cool, so this is what I was told to do. Just do questions. Every person and their cat was telling me to just do questions, and I'm sure it's been the same for you. PassMed kept coming up. They were like, oh, just do PassMed. I don't know if anyone actually did tell me to memorize nice CKS, or whether it was a joke, but yeah, that last one, Guess and Pray, definitely came up. So the questions thing, of course, you need to do questions, and I know a lot of people that just did questions for like 4-6 weeks. Well, that's what they say, and they got through. But I also know people that completed all of PassMed, all the question banks, and they didn't pass. Yeah, just make of that as what you will, but this is what I was told to do. So why did I decide to do something different? I've got 2 reasons on here, but actually probably 3. I'll start with the life one. It basically just meant that I had quite a busy period in life at that point, which I'm sure you guys are busy as well. I was and still am planning my wedding. I had a friend's wedding actually in Mauritius, I think a few weeks before my AKT exam. I was trying to prepare for some races, some fitness races. So I had quite a few other bits on, so that's why I went for a different approach, which I'll talk about. And the other thing is anti-burnout. Like I said, 3rd year medical school, rough. Burnt out, everything, it was a lot. And I said from that point onwards, I'm not going to be cramming for exams or like squeezing everything into one period just because I don't work very well like that. And that's why I decided to go for the more scenic route. So yes, there will be people you hear about that just smash out revision in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and they get through. But I just wouldn't be able to do that, and it probably wouldn't be very effective for me. The third thing is about actually being the kind of GP that I want to be. Now, my relationship with GP has been a bit complicated. There have been times where I'm like, I want to leave. But there have also been times where I've really enjoyed it. And I found that the more knowledge, or the more solidified my knowledge base is, the more kind of enjoy my clinics. Just makes clinics run a bit more smoothly. So for me, it wasn't just about revising for the AKT. It was about revising for the job and the career and everything that comes after it. I had my SCA coming up as well, soonish after, and I just couldn't be bothered to relearn everything for that, because I'd been told that you need to have a good knowledge base for the SCA. So those were my reasons for going down this route, which you might think is a little bit more work, you might think it's more time consuming, you might think it's too much effort, but for me it just worked a lot better. The resources, RCGP self-test, I meant to write, completed it, and then I'll just move on. PassMed, there's no actual t-shirt for completing RCGP self-test, by the way. PassMed, I did half of it, maybe a bit less. Well Medic courses, so I thought they were really good, a bit more reasonably priced. I don't know whether the prices have gone up since, but when I did them, I thought they were pretty good, solid. So we'll talk about those later. Then just the standard resources. Red Whale, I think because my VTS signed up to a study day with them or something, we had access for 12 months of their handbooks, which are pretty good. And these 2 big ones. We'll start with Anki. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a flashcards, freely available app. Maybe you have to pay an iPhone a little bit, I'm not sure. But it's all about spaced repetition. So this is that practice testing, active recall, all the stuff which is all over study YouTube. There was a landmark study, but I'm not going to bore you with it. But basically, you should be trying to get, I know I'm not giving advice here, but you should be getting some sort of practice testing, so active recall and spaced repetition, however you're getting that done. So I use Anki a lot, which we'll talk about. And time. Don't we wish we could all have a little bit more? Try to set aside around 8 to 10 hours a week for about 10 weeks. Then after that, I just had a few weeks of doing questions. That was what I was aiming for. Obviously, I didn't hit it all the time. Loads of stuff was happening, but that was my marker for weekly success, if you like. But again, completely individual to you. You might not need that much time. You might need more time. And people often always underestimate how much time. They'll say they did it in a month or 2 months, but I'd always add like an extra month to that. So this is the rough model. I was trying to think of a way to make it easy to digest. This is version 1 of this whole talk, to be honest. So I'm sure it's going to change if I decide to do any more. I'm rambling. But the first thing, you need to scope your weaknesses out, then digest the knowledge, and then do a cycle. Sounds very abstract, but I'm actually going to talk you through exactly what I mean with a walkthrough. Bottom there, an ongoing process is Anki, so putting things into flashcards so you remember it, and consolidating knowledge, which again we'll talk about, but it's basically doing questions. So the best way is probably just to show you. Yeah, this is actually looks like a weird slide and looks quite busy, but there's a method, and this is like my base, if you like. So I had all the topics in the RCGP curriculum. I based this on, there's a guy called Tom Watchman who did 0 to finals. Some of you might have used his resources for med school. I think they came just after I graduated. But he's a cool dude. Like, we've got a lot of similar interests. He likes basketball, and his approach to learning is quite similar to mine. I think this template is still freely available on his website somewhere. He talks about this thing called a test sandwich. So you test yourself on something, learn it, and then test yourself again. So I used a modified approach of that. Wrote all my topics down here. Ignore the colours. That's a bit, just ignore it. And ignore these middle numbers here. But these numbers, this first row are the first test that I took on RCGP self-test. It's a test of 20. So my cardiovascular was a bit weak at the beginning, 55%, and then gradually got a bit better as time went on. Enough talking, I'm going to have to talk. Let's just say this was how I started. This was my topic list. Here you can see this is so step 1. The first thing I did was scope our weaknesses. I did a test on each one. I didn't even review the answers, just did a test to see where I was at. And I saw, okay, look, so my weakest area is population health on that first rundown. So just one quiz of 20 questions. If you use self-test, you know what I'm talking about. So it's just that one quiz of 20 questions. And then I said, okay, which is my weakest one? Population health. Then I went into the GP self-test. I looked at that quiz again. And as you can see, I didn't do very well. But that was my scope. And now I'm looking to digest information. So what I did, I'd go down each question, whether I got it right or wrong, and I'd digest or ingest the information so I didn't get it wrong again. That was the thought process. So let's say, for example, this one was about breast cancer risk. I read through the question, okay, and self-test explanations can be a bit limited. So I use self-test as my guiding principle for what I'm going to study in that session, if that makes sense. So this is breast cancer risk. So then I'll start getting into my resources. So we'll get into red whale. I might throw up a GP notebook as well, just so I've got all the information there. And this is where I'll get into my my flashcards. So, for example, like I'd have a look at breast cancer risk. I'd have a little read and see, okay. So then we start thinking about what increases, so this would be a really bad Anki card, to be honest. Like, I'd never make one like this. But talking about my Anki technique would be like a whole video in itself. But then I've got like another card. So then this is, if you can imagine, I've started to build up a picture, and then I make sure that breast cancer risk, I've got it on lock. So I'm putting that in my Anki cards. So yeah, so then okay, then I'll go on to the next one. In terms of picking which one, so look, I didn't do very well in this test at all. In terms of picking how broad or how narrow you stay, you just develop that with judgment and feel. Again, it's hard to, until you start doing it, you'll know what I mean. But let's say for breast cancer risk, I might want to cover just risk factors for breast cancer. But what I won't do is cover the whole of breast cancer as a whole topic. Whereas vitamin D deficiency, rather than just talking about testing for vitamin D deficiency, I might say, you know what, let me just cover all of vitamin D deficiency, including sort of diagnosis, management as well. Start to pick it up, and at the beginning it will be quite difficult, and you'll feel like your knowledge is a little bit bitty and a bit sort of scattered, but over time it starts to fit together and you'll be able to make those decisions a lot more easily. But again, this is what I did. Remember, this isn't an advice video. I'd essentially just repeat that process in a way. Let me come back here. So if you can see, that was my first round. So then I did, let's say, population health because it's my weakest. And then once I've gone through each topic, so then I'd next do sexual health because it was my next weakest. Maybe I'll do this one, equality, diversion, and inclusion, and so on. I'll start building on my weakest topics, and then I'd follow on to the next round. So once I've ingested all of this first column, of all my topics, just one go over, 120 question quiz, then I will say, okay, now it's time for me to do another quiz. So let's say I've ingested everything, one round, I'll then go to population health again, retest myself with 20 new questions on self-test, and I'll probably just digest population health at that point, and then carry on and so on, then go on to sexual health, do 20 questions, digest that information with Anki cards, and so on. And if you keep doing that process, you know, so you can see my second column here, I've scored a lot better. But again, I then go to my weakest column. So, okay, dermatology. So let's start with dermatology. Then you go. So what ends up happening is, I should have probably have done a slide on this. Rather than doing 2 weeks of cardio and then 2 weeks of derm and then 2 weeks of MSK, I'm doing everything's going concentrically. So I'm doing a little bit of cardio, a little bit of derm, a little bit. I'm actually doing the weakest parts of each topic if you think about it. So I'm doing my sexual health, population of the weakest parts of each one, infectious disease, cover at least a bit of a base of everything. Then we'll move on to the next level, do a bit more of cardio, a bit more of endo, a little bit more. And eventually you start to build a picture. You can see your weaknesses, start scoping and digesting from there. I probably made that really confusing. But let me know if I have. Admin and stats. So I did the same approach I just spoke to you about, but I used the Well Medic course, which again, pretty good. I think I dropped 1 or 2 marks on each one. Use the same approach, blocked out a week to do the admin one, a week to do the stats course. But you do need to do a little bit more reading around the stuff that's in the Well Medic course, which he even advises as well. I think there's a couple of questions on them as well. Yeah, just one of those you've got to get done. Just another recap, your scope, so you're finding your weaknesses using that testing sandwich method. You're then digesting the weakest bits, but gradually building your knowledge base up across topics. Then you sort of do it again. Keep using Anki and consolidate your knowledge. And to do that, so I would run through approximately 30 new cards a day. So I start going to the gym, you start off gradual, and then when it gets a bit more intense, you can go up to about 50 new cards a day. Because I took a week off essentially for his friend's wedding, I had to catch up a little bit afterwards and do a few more. You do need to be really strict with your daily reviews though. That is something that, because I've been using Anki since med school, I was quite used to, but that can take some getting used to, especially if you had like a long day. So I try and like get as many as you can do in the morning, maybe try and do a couple in between clinics if you've got time. And my game changer for me was this little console thing down here. I was able to hook up to my Anki card and control it with my Anki card, and I used headphones in my ears, and the Anki card would actually talk to me, ask me what the question is, and I'd just be able to click yes or no using my little mini controller about this small. That was really helpful. So when I used to my 45-hour walk to work, I used to smash out most of my reviews in the morning, so that was quite handy. To be honest, couldn't have done it without it. Consolidation. So this is basically mocks. So you want to try and obviously get as many questions and past paper questions as you can. You Google AKT sample questions, stuff comes up. I think one of those course that I did with study leave, RCGP AKT course, they've got a mock on there. Well Medic's got quite a good mock actually, because they're quite difficult. For me, it felt a bit more reflective of the real thing. PASMA, like I said, I dabbled. Well, I more than dabbled, but I ran through half, and I knew that I wasn't going to get any more. I didn't think it was the right use of my time. My trainers gave me some marks. My trainers were great as well. Debrief, that was handy, especially for the admin and stats questions, or especially the admin questions. Use them. Patients, everyone says read around your patients, which, to be honest, I just was never that quick with finishing patients. So I'd find that quite difficult to, carve out 2 or 3 minutes here and there to read about what I've just seen. And then so exam technique is huge for the AKT, and I'm not really sure how you can learn it or study it. And I think the best way, obviously, is to learn your knowledge, but just be aware there's going to be some vague questions that come up. My approach was just to learn the stuff as best as I could. Yeah, usual stuff. Keep up with all the other stuff. About the evidence behind exercise, sleeping well. A lot of relaxation time is important. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys have done probably literally hundreds of exams. You've got your own system. So I'm not going to, and again, this is not advice. So I think that's all, to be honest. I am going to make an SCA video similar to this one. So if you'd like to hear that one, or watch that one, make sure you hit subscribe. If you are interested in the 3,000 Anki cards that I made and getting hold of them, I'll need to kind of repackage them, make them a bit more readable, to be honest, and just use the Google form below. And finally, some people have asked about sort of coaching and exam, helping them with some one-to-one stuff with AKT exam revision, which we'll see. If you're interested, you can maybe let me know in the Google forms. But I am looking to work with people that are hoping to do a similar sort of method. So I'll make it a bit more individualized, but people that don't mind doing the scenic route, a bit more of a holistic, slow burn sort of thing, rather than kind of cramming in the last couple of weeks. Okay, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. If you've got any feedback how I can make this video a little bit better, please let me know. Okay, thanks. Best of luck if you've got your AKT coming up as well. Bye.